Good afternoon. My name is Jason Coody, and I'm the Acting United States Attorney for the Northern District of Florida. Thank you for being here today for this important announcement about our ongoing work to investigate and prosecute those engaged in acts of public corruption in the city of Lynn Haven. In November of 2019, we announced the indictment of 5 defendants. That indictment charged the former Lynn Haven City Manager, the Lynn Haven Community Service Director, and others with various acts of corruption and fraud. Those charges were based on their unlawful conduct and receipt of disaster relief funds following Hurricane Michael. As alleged in that indictment, this investigation began with a focus on corrupt abuse of public office for personal enrichment through a conspiracy to defraud the city of Lynn Haven of approximately $5 million in taxpayer funds. All of those defendants have pled guilty. We returned in August of 2020 to on our progress in the fight against public corruption in this community. At that time, we announced the indictment and arrest of former Lynn Haven Mayor Margot Deal Anderson and former Lynn Haven City Attorney Joseph Adam Albritton on similar corruption and fraud charges. Those charges are pending and are included in the superseding indictment we are announcing today. This morning, our law enforcement partners arrested former Lynn Haven City Commissioner Antonius Genzara Barnes and local developer David James Finch. The 44-count superseding indictment returned by a federal grand jury on Tuesday afternoon alleges that both Finch and Barnes participated in the conspiracy with then Mayor Anderson and then City Attorney Albritton to ensure that contracts for numerous multi-million-dollar infrastructure and construction projects, as well as post-Hurricane Michael debris cleanup activities, were awarded to Finch. In return, Finch allegedly provided money and gifts to Anderson and Barnes, while Albritton allegedly received kickbacks from the company doing debris cleanup for the city of Lynn Haven. We have said this before, and I say it again today. This investigation will continue. Our work and the work of our law enforcement partners will not stop until all pertinent information is gathered, evaluated, and until every lead is explored. Today I'm joined by Federal Bureau of Investigation Special Agent in Charge Rachel Rojas and Bay County Sheriff Tommy Ford. In a moment, they will share with you their perspectives on today's indictment. I'm also joined by Assistant United States Attorney Stephen Coons. He is a senior prosecutor and serves within our Public Trust Unit. Mr. Coons is the primary prosecutor in this ongoing investigation. In a few moments, he will provide you with additional details regarding the superseding indictment. After Special Agent Rojas, Sheriff Ford, and Assistant United States Attorney Coons complete their remarks, we will respond to some questions to the limited extent that we can, given that this investigation is ongoing. Before we address specific acts alleged in the superseding indictment, I want to assure the citizens of this community that our Public Trust Unit remains hard at work on these sophisticated and complicated and sensitive cases. But our Public Trust Unit does not work alone. Your federal law enforcement agencies, with the participation of dedicated law enforcers like Sheriff Ford and his team, are serving you daily and working in lockstep with our prosecutors to hold accountable those who corrupt our government and who would violate the public's trust. We are grateful to partner with the dedicated professionals of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and in this case, Sheriff Tommy Ford and the Bay County Sheriff's Office. Together, we will work toward one common goal, using the most sophisticated law enforcement tools to bring and build these critically important cases. At this time, I would hand the mic over to Special Agent Mr. Coons.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Stephen Kunz. I'm Assistant United States Attorney in the Northern District of Florida. I'd like to right now provide to you all a brief summary of the superseding indictment that was returned in this case. The defendants that are charged, individuals who are charged as defendants in this superseding indictment are Margot Deal Anderson, the former Lynn Haven mayor, Mr. Joseph Adam Albritton, the former Lynn Haven city attorney, and Antonio Jazara Barnes, the former Lynn Haven commissioner, and Mr. James David Finch. As Mr. Coody indicated, this is a 44-count superseding indictment that charges in the first count of conspiracy to defraud the city of Lynn Haven and the citizens of honest services here in the area. That's count 1. And then counts 2 through 40 are substantive counts, substantive charges of both wire fraud, execution of the scheme by wire fraud communications, and honest services wire fraud communications. Miss Anderson and Mr. Albritton are also charged with the substantive count of theft concerning programs receiving federal funds. That's count 41. Ms. Anderson is also charged with making false statements to the FBI when she was interviewed back in November 2019. That's count 42. Mr. Finch is also charged with making false statements to FBI agents when interviewed last July of 2020. That's count 43. And finally, Mr. Albritton is charged in the superseding indictment with committing mail fraud concerning the defrauding of an insurance company. Now, the penalties for the conspiracy count 1, and counts 2 through 40, the wire fraud and honest services fraud counts, is a maximum of 20 years imprisonment. For count 41, the theft concerning programs receiving federal funds, the maximum punishment is up to 10 years imprisonment. For counts 42 and 43, the making false statements to an executive agency, namely the Federal Bureau of Investigation here, the punishment is up to 5 years imprisonment. And finally, the mail fraud count, the last count of the indictment, of the superseding indictment, also the penalty for that is up to 20 years imprisonment. Now, this superseding indictment adds to the prior indictment. Former City Commissioner Barnes and Mr. Finch, a developer here in town, and adds it to Ms. Anderson and Mr. Albritton, who were previously charged with various fraud and conspiracy and corruption charges. Now, in the superseding indictment, the conspiracy now also charges the efforts of Ms. Anderson and Mr. Finch, Ms. Anderson when she was mayor, and Mr. Finch last year in 2020 to have Finch construct a rebuild of the municipal buildings in Lynn Haven, despite the City Commission having already approved a plan in place to have architects prepare a design and have FEMA insurance proceeds pay for most of the approximate $19 million project. The superseding indictment also charges former Commissioner Barnes as a defendant and charges that he, as a city commissioner, received $45,000 from Mr. Finch in a series of 7 payments. And as commissioner, Mr. Barnes voted consistently to approve for various projects before Lynn Haven for Mr. Finch, and after the receipt of the monies that he received from Finch during a 2-year period. Now, when you see the superseding indictment, you'll recognize some language from the previous indictment, namely the allegations with respect to the ECS fraudulent invoices that were billed to the city, also about the vegetative debris that was disposed of, and they're very similar paragraphs in the superseding indictment, and Mr. Finch was added to the conspiracy and many of the substantive count paragraphs. He was formerly referred to in the original indictment as the owner of Company B. Also, the 17th Street project and half-cent surtax design and build contract is similarly charged in the superseding indictment as it was previously, and both Mr. Finch and Mr. Barnes are added to those conspiracy and substantive counts paragraphs with some new paragraphs. And as you'll see when you see the indictment was unsealed approximately an hour ago. Both new defendants were arrested, and they appeared for initial appearance in Tallahassee before the United States Magistrate Judge, and on this indictment. They were arraigned on this indictment. Now, the superseding indictment, with respect to those $45,000 in 7 different checks, that occurred between September 8th of 2015, the indictment charges, and December 4th of 2017. That these checks were issued in amounts of $8,000, $12,000, $5,000, $10,000, and two $2,500 checks and a $5,000 check. And the indictment also alleges that Mr. Barnes deposited these checks into one of his two insurance business accounts, and he actually cashed the last $5,000 check. The superseding indictment also alleges that Mr. Barnes never reported this $45,000 that he received from Finch as required by Florida law, and has never reported the money as a liability in multiple bank loans made that he defaulted on since receiving the money. And as the indictment indicates, Mr. Barnes voted on various Finch projects before, during, and after receipt of the monies that he received from Mr. Finch during the 2-year period, and this was concealed and never disclosed to the public. Now, the indictment, when you take a look at it, has a section called City of Lynn Haven Design and Rebuild Scheme. And it includes, as part of the conspiracy, as I indicated a little bit earlier, that there was a plan to construct and rebuild new municipal buildings in the city of Lynn Haven, and that the plan was already in progress from late fall of 2019 going into early 2020. The architects were preparing designs, and most of the cost, up to $19 million for this project, was going to be paid by both FEMA and insurance proceeds, according to the indictment. The superseding indictment charges that on September 24th, 2019, the City Commission started working on requests for qualifications for architectural designs, and they proceeded on that through January of 2020, and negotiations were done and contracts started working and having workshops, and many of you may be familiar with some of those workshops. The superseding indictment alleges that in early 2020, Mr. Finch bought a piece of property for $750,000, and within a week of that purchase, Ms. Anderson, as mayor, contacted both the Lynn Haven city manager and the police chief and told them that she wasn't pleased with the current rebuild design plan, and directed them to attend a meeting with her at Mr. Finch's business office. She stated that Mr. Finch had an alternative plan for the city rebuild that Finch would build. And the superseding indictment indicates that on or about April 20th, Ms. Anderson, as mayor, the city manager, the police chief, met with Finch at his business, and Mr. Finch advised he'd purchase property that would be great for the police department and the fire department, and he'd be building a fortified concrete building. He indicated the architect's plan would cost too much for Lynn Haven, and he claimed that his property, which was a former trailer park, was the best place in Lynn Haven, and that the City Commission would be interested in hearing the price for his design, build, and finance. And Ms. Anderson supported Mr. Finch's plan and told the city manager and police chief that Mr. Finch was willing to finance the costs of the facilities like he did for the 17th Street ditch project. That's also charged in the indictment. And the superseding indictment charges that over the next several months, there were numerous contacts by both Mayor Anderson and Mr. Finch with the police chief and the city manager and others to obtain their support for Mr. Finch's proposed project to replace the architect's rebuild design. In the manner and means paragraphs 90, 91 through 117 of the superseding indictment, it lays out the allegations with respect to details of the efforts of Mayor Anderson to steer the rebuild design contracts to rebuild municipal hall, the police department, some sports facilities, all of those items, to have Mr. Finch instead handle that. Finally, in the indictment, the superseding indictment, Mr. Finch is charged with making false statements to the FBI back in July of 2020 with respect to the transfer of a motorhome to the mayor and her husband. And the allegations are that these statements he made concerning that and a bill of sale that he provided to the FBI were fraudulent. And those are all my comments. Thank you, sir.
Special Agent Rojas. Excuse me.
Thanks, Steve. Sorry, let me unlock myself. Good afternoon. I am Rachel Rojas, Special Agent in charge of the FBI Jacksonville Division. I oversee the FBI office that's here in Panama City, and I'm proud to stand before you for the third time in 15 months with even more proof of the FBI's commitment to rooting out public corruption in this community. As you know all too well, Hurricane Michael devastated much of this area in 2018. And today, many of you are still working to rebuild your lives and your businesses. And as you do, my team is working tirelessly to protect the contributions that you, hardworking, tax-paying members of this community, are making to redevelop Bay County into the special place that we all love. The charges outlined in this indictment exemplify what happens when public servants become complicit in corrupt behavior instead of standing up to it. And standing up to it is what you should expect them to do. You should expect them to work on your behalf. You should expect them to protect your best interests. You should expect them to serve with integrity. But when public servants betray the trust that you have placed in them and put personal greed above their responsibility to protect you, their citizens, rest assured the FBI is going to work in lockstep with our partners to hold them accountable. Public corruption cannot be tolerated nor accepted because it weakens the foundation of our democracy. As I've explained before, piecing together these cases is incredibly complex, and it's very tedious work. It takes a lot of time, as you can now see, but I assure you we are committed to this work because it is so important to the health of our community, to our state, and to our country. I'm also proud to announce today that I have recommitted FBI Jacksonville's participation in the U.S. Attorney's Office Public Trust Unit during this period of transition for their office. And let there be no doubt, our work here is not over. I want to end by thanking Acting U.S. Attorney Jason Coody and Assistant U.S. Attorney Stephen Kuntz for recommitting your support to us as well. As we continue to move forward in these cases, we appreciate the smooth transition so far, and we look forward to our continued partnership. And to Bay County Sheriff Thomas Ford, your team has been committed to this case from the very beginning. As I've pledged to you in the past, we will continue to push forward in lockstep with you to ensure that those who commit fraud and corruption in this community are brought to justice. Thank you. Sheriff?
Good afternoon. This is a very difficult day in Bay County, as it's clear that there's been a corruption of the way that certain business is conducted in our community. We will not tolerate that and will be aggressive in our fight to reform this corruption. These arrests represent the continuation of our efforts in partnership to root out corruption, and I anticipate additional indictments and arrests that will continue to make the scope of this problem clear to the residents of Bay County. Our team of senior criminal investigators and an analyst at the Sheriff's Office continue to work this case. I'm proud of their dedication and of the great work they've done alongside our partners with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the U.S. Attorney's Office. We are committed to continue to dedicate these resources to address this very important issue. I appreciate the efforts and expertise of our partners with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office. We appreciate the efforts of Acting U.S. Attorney Jason Coody and his predecessor, Larry Keefe, for their commitment to hold those in the public trust accountable for their actions and to shine a bright light on issues that have plagued our community for too long. I also appreciate the work of Assistant U.S. Attorney Stephen Kuntz in this matter as well. Let me be clear as well that there are many businesses in Bay County that work hard every day to help us rebuild and are doing so with the utmost integrity. We also have many great public servants that are in it for the right reasons with integrity beyond reproach. We will not allow the actions of a few to tarnish the reputation of this great county and all that are doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. I'll echo some of the same comments Sheriff Ford just made. It's essential to recognize in this community and throughout our entire district, the vast majority of those serving at all levels of our government are truly honest and dedicated public servants. They work tirelessly to provide the trusted service that our citizens expect and deserve. However, that very small group that you referenced, Sheriff, that serves for their own illegal benefit and profit, who illegally seek to influence, those will be the continued targets of our work. Lastly, I would like to thank you, the citizens of this community. Every citizen has a meaningful role to play in the fight against corruption. If you see something, we all ask that you say something. Please relay any concerns, any complaints, any fears you have with regard to these issues to our hotline that is on our website. At this time, I will open it up for questions, and I'll ask Assistant United States Attorney Stephen Coons to step forward to answer your substantive questions. Thank you.
What is the status of what does this indictment today, the superseding indictment, do to the status of the trial that was set for Anderson and Albritton for May? Is that going to push this back now?
Well, it depends. The court will conduct a status conference, and then depending on with the new defendants, if they need more time than the May trial date, then it may well be extended. But we just don't know at this point, sir.
Do you plan to try all four of them together, or will this remain a two and maybe the additional two as a separate trial?
Well, it's one superseding indictment and one indictment, so it should be prosecuted with respect to all four together.
Have any of the defendants reacted in any way to the new superseding indictment today in the way of pleading?
Sir, I can't comment on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are you looking into any other people in this investigation?
Again, I can't comment other than what Mr. Coody has said, and the FBI, SAC, and the sheriff. The corruption investigation is still ongoing.
This indictment, as you read through it, would seem to portray James Finch as controlling several key members of city government as sort of a puppet master to do his bidding, and those that wouldn't cooperate as using bully tactics to get what he needed. Would that be fair and accurate to say?
Again, I can't comment on that. Nothing beyond what's charged in the indictment. You just have to look at the indictment, and the indictment makes the allegations, and of course we'll prove that in court.
Did I understand that Mr. Finch is paid, from the indictment, is paying Ms. Anderson's legal fees to the tune of $200,000?
Again, that's what's alleged in the indictment. Yes, sir.
In reference to World Claim Insurance, it says that a city commissioner had their personal claims adjusted for free of charge by World Claim. Is that a current city commissioner or a former?
Again, I can't comment anything beyond. We're very limited with our rules. I can't comment anything beyond what's alleged in the indictment. I'm sorry.
How long do you foresee this investigation going on for?
These are type matters. I think the SAC could respond to this a little better than me. As long as it takes, is what I think we're all going to do.
The majority of the first 7 defendants seem to center around activities that took place after the hurricane. This one seems to go back previous to the hurricane with the 17th Street repaving and ditch project, as well as the overall half-cent sales tax allocation to Mr. Finch. As the investigation moves forward, do you see this widening out to more areas outside of post-storm activities?
Again, I can't comment with respect to the nature of the investigation or where it's going. I'm sorry to say. All I could do is indicate what's charged in the indictment. Okay, Jason.
Are there any other questions? All right, well, hearing none, we really appreciate your being here today, and thank you for your time.
So concludes about a 25-minute news conference held by Acting U.S. Attorney Jason Coody, along with Assistant U.S. Attorney Bay County Sheriff Tommy Ford and FBI Special Agent. The Lynn Haven corruption indictments grown by 2 names, former Lynn Haven Commissioner Antonius Barnes and local developer James Finch. They have been indicted in the superseding indictment. Also, former Mayor Margot Anderson and City Attorney Adam Albritton, former attorney there. They have been also named in the superseding indictment. Essentially, and there's a lot of information here, but essentially, Barnes and Finch were allegedly participating in a conspiracy to be awarded contracts for new construction in Lynn Haven and aftermath of Hurricane Michael, Phoenix's construction company owned by James Finch. In return, Finch allegedly provided money and gifts, kickbacks for the work there. The authority is saying that this investigation is far from over. Anticipate more arrests in the future. The FBI special agent saying the work here is not over. We will have more information later on News 13 Live at 5 and News 13 at 6. And for right now, we appreciate you staying with us. I'm Jerry Brown, News 13.